As I'm sure you heard, President Trump brokered the peace deal in the Middle East, finally putting an end to the Israel-Gaza war, returning the remaining Israeli hostages back home. And he was over there yesterday celebrating it. The entire country is celebrating him. Many, obviously, around the world, even many Democrats and those in the liberal media, those soulless teleprompter readers, are actually giving President Trump credit for what he did. Well, that is, except for Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren, who posted, "For 2 excruciating years, I have called for the return of the hostages brutally kidnapped on October 7th and held in Gaza. Today is a good day. Surviving Israeli hostages are finally home and reunited with loved ones. I'm thinking of them and their families on this joyous day and praying for their full recovery. I'm also grieving for those who can't come home today. Today must also be an important step towards lasting peace in the region. Peace for both Israelis and Palestinians. We must end the war in Gaza, surge humanitarian aid, and negotiate a 2-state solution now. I have called for the return of the hostages," she says. And now we're all waiting to see if the fake conservative on The View, Alyssa Farah Griffin, will appear on the show today wearing a MAGA hat. She didn't appear on the show yesterday wearing a MAGA hat, even though in December of last year, after President Trump had won the 2024 election, she promised this.
If he does good, if he gets the Israeli hostages out, I promise I will wear a MAGA hat for one day on the show and say, thank you for doing it. Yeah. She'll knock it right off my head.
After the remaining hostages were released and it was seen that they were all men, many of the kosher conservatives, like Laura Loomer, the queen of kosher conservatives, sounded off on Twitter, spreading fake news, claiming all of the female hostages are dead. Where is the outrage? Having forgot that during the previous hostage release after negotiations, the women were released then. The only ones who were remaining were 20 or so men. And thank God it's finally over so we can all get a break from our Israel fatigue. Most of the world is tired of having to deal with the ongoing ethnic land disputes halfway around the world between 2 different ethnic groups. Tired of American tax dollars going to fund Israel and deal with their problems. Tired of American soldiers getting sucked into wars in the Middle East that have nothing to do with us. Not to mention the way that Benjamin Netanyahu dealt with this, virtually destroying every single building throughout Gaza, ethnically cleansing the region, causing a humanitarian crisis unlike the world has seen for generations, which has caused a massive rise in actual anti-Semitism. Something that even South Park covered with one of the characters' moms, who was Jewish, going over to Israel to give Benjamin Netanyahu a piece of her mind.
Netanyahu! Just who do you think you are? Killing thousands and flattening neighborhoods, then wrapping yourself in Judaism like it's some shield from criticism. You're making life for Jews miserable and life for American Jews impossible. Oh, don't you roll your eyes at me, mister. You know what you're doing, and you're doing it on purpose. Well, now you can just sit in that chair, because I'm not going anywhere, Buster. I've been to every PTA meeting, every school board meeting, and I can go all day.
And yesterday, when he was in Israel celebrating, President Trump made a stunning statement, putting his biggest donor, Miriam Adelson, who was married to Sheldon Adelson, who died a few years ago, very wealthy American Jews, worth like $60 billion, put her on the spot and said this.
Miriam and Sheldon would come into the office. They'd call me. He'd call me. I think they had more trips to the White House than anybody else I can think of. Look at her sitting there so innocently. She's got $60 billion in the bank, $60 billion, and I think she's saying no more. And she loves Israel, but she loves it. And they would come in, and her husband was a very aggressive man, but I loved him. He was a very aggressive, very supportive of me. And he'd call up, can I come over and see you? I say, Sheldon, I'm the President of the United States. It doesn't work that way. He'd come in and would do. But they were very responsible for so much. And her and her husband are so incredible. We miss him so dearly.
When he says this country, obviously he's talking about Israel. That's where he's at.
But I actually asked her, I'm going to get her in trouble with this, but I actually asked her once, I said, so Miriam, I know you love Israel. What do you love more, the United States or Israel? She refused to answer. That might mean Israel, I must say.
That reminds me of Ben Shapiro, who once told an audience in Israel that the only reason he supports the United States is because the United States supports Israel.
Ever wonder if one day you will have to flee the United States?
I mean, I think that every Jew throughout world history who has a brain and knows history has always wondered if a country that is not a Jewish state is going to eternally provide them security guarantees and full citizenship, of course. I mean,
Of course, he has to perpetuate the fear-mongering, just like Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL, who wrote a book that said that there might be another Holocaust, and this time in America. It's just around the corner if we don't start censoring more people on social media. So Ben is playing into that fear-mongering, saying, well, of course, I mean, I may have to flee America someday and escape to Israel. You just never know.
that's, I think, to think that that's why the existence of the state of Israel is the single greatest guarantor of my loyalty to the United States, frankly. Right? Because Israel exists, that means the United States is going to be a more welcoming place for me, because Israel is there as a backstop in case anything should go wrong.
And speaking of Ben Shapiro, I think he was a little off his game in this clip because he didn't exactly help to dispel the stereotypes.
Do you think William Shakespeare was an anti-Semite?
By the evidence in Merchant of Venice, sure. The Merchant of Venice is, in fact, an anti-Semitic work.
The Merchant of Venice, by the way, is a play by Shakespeare about a Jewish moneylender named Shylock who lends money to someone, and this is where the phrase "a pound of flesh" comes in, because he demanded a pound of flesh as payment for somebody who defaulted on the loan.
And I have a habit of trying to read great works and then also understand that there's terrible things often in great works. That's something new. I don't like bowdlerized versions of literature. By the way, that's true of an enormous number of people historically. A lot of great literature, a lot of great thinkers who weren't fond of my kind.
He really did just say that a lot of intelligent people are, well, you know. I guess that's why Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson have been added to that list. Here is what John McCain's daughter's husband, neocon Benjamin Dominic, says, who is a Fox News contributor. He posted this 2 years ago about Charlie, saying if Charlie Kirk remains the head of TPUSA, the right has an anti-Semite problem that will follow them into the coming elections. Because, as we all know, Charlie Kirk was souring on neocons and on Benjamin Netanyahu and on the Ginos, the Jews in name only, the liberal, secular, atheist Jews, and some of the things that they are involved in.
Jewish communities have been pushing the exact kind of hatred against whites that they claim to want people to stop using against them. Now, I don't like generalizations. Not every Jewish person believes that. But it is true the Anti-Defamation League was part and parcel with Black Lives Matter. It is true that some of the largest financiers of left-wing anti-white causes have been Jewish Americans. They went all in on woke, and it wasn't just ADL. It was some of the top Jewish organizations in the country that have done that.
So this is why people like Brandon Tatum, Laura Loomer, Mark Levin, Joel Pollack, and others are trying to wrestle control of Turning Point USA to rein them in from this kind of talk. And this is why people like Joel Berry, the managing editor at the Babylon Bee, say things like this: if Turning Point USA manages to beat back the Groyper assault, I think they, Turning Point USA, could help usher in a golden age of political and spiritual revival in America. The Groyper assaults he's talking about means young fans of Nick Fuentes, young Gen Z kids who often go to Turning Point USA events and politely ask Charlie Kirk the difficult questions that you never hear any journalist asking any politician, questions which Charlie has had a very difficult time answering and has tried to squirm out of, because just asking the question raises awareness about very taboo topics that now are pretty much commonly discussed because the Overton window has been moved so far. People like this kid, who I'm not saying is a Groyper, that's a term that the conservative mainstream media has deemed to be synonymous with a neo-Nazi. But this kid asked Glenn Beck some very difficult questions about Israel's influence over American foreign policy and America in general at a recent Turning Point USA event. I'm not going to play the clip again. I played it yesterday. If you missed it, go and check that video. And in case you didn't know, the Groypers are the ones who showed up at this event upon the direction of Nick Fuentes when Charlie Kirk was trying to bring that black gay diversity hire into mainstream conservatism in order to normalize those kinds of people, where they asked Charlie Kirk and his DEI hire some basic standard questions that, again, caused Charlie Kirk to squirm, caused him to eventually back away from and stop promoting. And speaking of taboo topics, here is actor Seth Rogen weighing in on the controversial ethnic land dispute that's been going on in its modern form for 75 years over there between Israel and Gaza.
I also think that as a Jewish person, like, I was fed a huge amount of lies about Israel my entire life, you know? Yeah. They never tell you that, oh, by the way, there were people there. They make it seem like it was just like they're sitting there. It was the doors open.
Hours for the taking.
Like, it literally, they forget to include the fact to every young Jewish person, basically, like, oh, by the way, there were people there. I'm afraid of Jews. I'm 100% afraid of Jews. Oh, yeah. That's it.
But you don't have to take his word for it. I mean, he is one of the biggest potheads in America and a typical Hollywood goofball. How about listening to President Harry Truman?
Don't think that decision to recognize Israel is an easy one. I had to make a compromise with the Arabs and divide Palestine. The Jews wanted to chase all the Arabs into the Tigris and Euphrates River, and the Arabs wanted to chase all the Jews into the Red Sea. And what I was trying to do was to find a homeland for the Jews and still be just with the Arabs. We had several other people in the country, even among the Jews, the Zionists particularly, who were against anything that was to be done if they couldn't have the whole of Palestine and everything handed to them on a silver plate so they wouldn't have to do anything. It couldn't be done. We had to take it in small doses. You can't move 5 or 6 million people out of a country and fill it up with 5 or 6 million more and expect both sets of them to be pleased. We had all sorts of objections to everything that was done. Something had to be done. We went ahead and done it and had it done, and now it's working out. Eventually, I think we'll have them all satisfied.
They'll have them all satisfied, huh? Well, here we are 75 years later, and obviously things aren't going according to plan. And it's a whole other issue to educate Christians into understanding exactly what Israel is all about. Most of them think that it's a Jewish country, meaning a Jewish religious country. But Theodore Herzl, the godfather of Zionism, was an atheist. He was an ethnic Jew. He was a Gino. So was David Ben-Gurion, Israel's first prime minister. Israel is a secular country. They are the gay capital of the Middle East. They allow abortions. They allow gay marriage. It is not a religious country. A lot of people, especially Christians, don't understand that the term Jew or Jewish means different things. It can mean a Jew as in someone who practices Judaism, the ancient Hebrew Israelite religion, or someone who is just ethnically Jewish, who is a descendant or a supposed descendant of that tribe, who is secular and an atheist. And most Christians misinterpret the Bible and think that if you don't bless Israel, that God won't bless you. Even though God blessed the United States as the greatest country in the world for many generations before the state of Israel was even created. And if you look around the United States, I mean, it sure looks like God is actually cursing our nation now. And not to mention, there are numerous passages in the Bible where Jesus says, "Therefore I tell you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you," meaning the unbelievers, "and given to a people producing its fruits," meaning those who believe in Jesus. And verse 45, when the chief priests and Pharisees heard his parables, they perceived he was speaking about them. Hebrews 8, verse 13, in speaking of the new covenant, it makes the old one obsolete. And what is becoming obsolete and growing old is ready to vanish away. All of this is detailed in my last book, The War on Conservatives, so I hope you check it out in paperback from Amazon.com. And be sure to subscribe to my channel if you're new here. Check back on a regular basis. And if you enjoy watching my videos and you want to support my work, then buy me a coffee by clicking the link in the description below. BuyMeACoffee.com is a great service to crowdsource or tip your favorite content creator because the super thanks and super chats get skimmed by YouTube at 30 or 40% even before taxes. So click the link in the description below. Buy me a coffee or however many coffees you think my work is worth. So head on over there and check it out.